Um, let's see, where was it? Mr. Skowronek, started with him because he was at the top and now he's moved to the middle of the screen. Ms. Schrock is the guardian ad litem attorney for the children. The mother, Alexis Johnson, is here. Her lawyer, Ms. Evans Battle, is here. Paris Williams is the father. Is he the father of both children?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I don't think he's here, but his lawyer, Ms. Crane, is here.
He's incarcerated.
Oh, okay. And Mr. Moore, the case manager, is here. All right. And there's Benny's phone. Are you Miss Jones?
Yes, I work for the foster care agency.
So you're not Lauren Jones, the foster parent.
No, I work for Community Connections, the foster care agency for Kiora and Kamari.
And what is your name?
Albany Tapp.
Tapp?
Correct.
Thank you. We have Ria Prasad. Anybody know who that is?
That's the foster parent judge.
Oh, is this the placement changed since the last time we were here?
We had that objection to notice of placement change hearing back in November, Your Honor. So yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Skowronek is going to give me a summary of what's transpired since the last review. And then the case manager will be available for questions from counsel. And then we'll hear if anybody else has anything they want to contribute to the review discussion, which I have a checklist of things that I need to check on before we get through. Go ahead, Mr. Skowronek.
So let's see. We were last in court on this case for a permanency review in September. In November, we had the objection to placement change. Mr. Moore has recently taken this case over from Ms. Wilcox and reports that basically everything is pretty much status quo since we were in court in November. If the court will recall, the notice of placement change was made due to Kiora having had unexplained marks and bruises while in the care of Ms. Jones, and there being the child potentially having been with the father during that time for a visit and an extended visit. So the reason I'm mentioning that, Your Honor, is my understanding from Mr. Moore that as a result of those injuries to the child and the perpetrator of those injuries being unknown, that the mother's visitation with the children has remained supervised, to my knowledge, from the department. The mother is continuing her individual parenting, co-parenting. She is employed and has provided some paycheck subs to Mr. Moore. She recently obtained housing of her own, apparently, in an apartment in the Atlanta East Point area. That home has been walked through. However, I'm not sure. Prentice explained this part to me because, Your Honor, he just gave me this morning. The home has been walked through. However, it was requested to be at her mother's home because of her sister being in a wheelchair and mother lives upstairs. What does that mean?
You had asked about the visitation. So the visitation is at the grandmother's house, the grandmother's kids, because Miss Alexis live upstairs, and when they do visitation, Miss Jones is at the visitation.
Okay, so the maternal grandmother is supervising the mother's visits with the children.
No, the transporter bring them over and supervise the visit.
Okay. And this apartment in the Atlanta East Point area that Ms. Johnson recently obtained, have you done the walkthrough of that or not?
Miss Wilcox been to the house and did the walkthrough before she left. She's been living there since December.
Since when?
Since December 2023.
December?
Yes, sir.
Were there any concerns or anything that needed to be addressed in the home for Ms. Johnson as to with regards to the appropriateness of the home for the children?
No, sir.
The paycheck stubs that you got from Ms. Johnson, are those still from the Fresh Point out in Fulton County?
The ones that I have seen.
Say that again.
Yes, sir.
So where's she employed now?
Same job.
Okay, the last thing I had was Fresh Point. So what is her current job?
I said the same job. She's still at the same job.
All right. And have you gotten paycheck stubs for her from the month of January, February of this year?
No, sir.
Was that a yes or a no?
No.
When was the last time you got a paycheck stub from Ms. Johnson?
I only seen the paychecks that we have in the record that she sent to Ms. Wilcox.
Okay. And you've had this case since December?
January.
Okay. The service provider for Ms. Johnson is still Loving Helping Hands for her counseling. She's done her assessments. We had previously reported that before. She's continuing to work on parenting education, provider services, and individual counseling. Mr. Williams has been in jail since November of 2023. He is charged currently with the unexplained marks and bruises to cure. His incarceration has obviously suspended any further services to him. The visitation for Ms. Johnson occurs Monday and Tuesdays at the home of the maternal grandmother. Mr. Williams doesn't have any visits, obviously, currently because of his incarceration. Kior receives physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, and is seen at CHOA for any medical follow-ups. Kamari had a 15-month well check in September of last year and first dental in September of last year and is in daycare. Kior had a 3-year checkup in September of last year in dental that was done in January of this year and is currently in daycare. That's basically it, Your Honor. These children have been in the department's custody respectively since October of 2020 as to Kior and Kamari since June 4th of 2022. So Kior is coming up on 3.5 years at this point, and Kamari is coming up on 2 years. The current permanency plan for Kior is concurrent plans of reunification, non-reunification, termination of parental rights. The current plan for Kamari is reunification. Given the length of time that Kamari has been in care, Your Honor, the department is asking at this time that child's permanency plan be changed to concurrent plans of reunification and non-reunification, termination of parental rights, adoption. The department is looking at Ms. Tawanda Dinkle, who is the maternal grandmother, I believe, as a prospective placement for the child, as a relative placement. And the department does currently intend to file for termination of parental rights as to both children. And I believe that is the extent of the department's report, Your Honor. I don't think there was anything I missed.
You said that the department was looking at a grandmother for placement of Kamari, just the one child, not both?
Mr. Moore.
That's both children, Your Honor.
Well, why would we be moving them again? Unless there's a problem with the current placement.
Into a home with a relative. They're currently in the foster home.
Yes. Who is the foster parent?
Ms. Rhea
The
Prasad.
lady that had trouble getting on?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Prasad? Okay. Mr. Skowronek, at the very beginning of your summary, you said that the mother was continuing to co-parent. Well, the father is in jail, so when has she been co-parenting?
No, that's, I meant parenting classes, Your Honor. I believe she's still receiving parent aid services of some kind. That's what, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The co-parenting is not taking place because of Mr. Williams's incarceration.
Okay, I just wondered if there was another parent I didn't know about or didn't remember. Okay. Well, does anybody know what's going on with the criminal case? Gosh, this is taking forever.
Well, Mr. Williams's criminal case is for the new charges that I know that he has for ocurrs injuries that occurred October, November in that range. I don't know anything further other than that, Your Honor. Mr. Moore?
You mean charges that don't go back to the beginning when this first happened, but later?
Correct.
There was a second incident where Kior had injuries, and that's why the placement change was made, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, with regards to the initial injuries to Kior, the last information that I had was that there had not been any new criminal charges filed. I believe that was a Clayton County case. But I'm not aware of there having been any new charges having been filed.
Okay.
Just if I may for a moment, Judge. Mr. Moore, did you have an opportunity to review the court's orders when you came into this case?
Who are you asking that of?
Mr. Moore?
Oh,
Yes, the ones I have.
Okay, do you have the one for September the 5th of 2023?
I think the last report I seen was the one that was from November when y'all did when they did the placement change. I think that's where I was.
In your review of the file, did you know that from the September 5th, 2023 hearing that the mother was to have unsupervised visits?
No, ma'am.
Does the record reflect that there was a family team meeting that took place 2 weeks? It was supposed to have taken place 2 weeks after court. Is there anything in your records to show that that took place?
No, ma'am.
Is there any notation about it at all?
About a family team meeting?
Yes.
No.
And when you looked at the November order, was there anything in the order that said the mother had to have supervised visits?
No. Since I had the case, they didn't have been supervised, and the reason why is because of the situation that led up to them moving. It was unclear as to who did what or how the child was injured. So that's how the visit continued.
Okay, and if that was addressed in the court's order already, would it not be the responsibility of the department to follow the court's order?
It was addressed in which court order?
I'm sorry?
In which court order are you referring to?
Well, court order. So September, the court ordered that she have unsupervised. The order from.
wait, y'all are both talking at the same time. And Mr. Moore, your mic is terrible. You need to get closer to your mic. I had trouble hearing you at the last hearing. One of you talk at a time. Let her finish her question, then you let Ms. Evans let him finish his answer.
Okay. In the November order, there was a hearing in regard to that, correct? As far as you know from looking at the documents.
Yes, ma'am.
And the court addressed what happened, but did not change the supervision or visitation for the mother.
What is the question you're asking?
So she was supposed to have unsupervised visit. Why did you all decide against the court's orders to impose a supervised visitation?
The visitation remained as it was when I got the case. Her visitation was supervised when I received the case, and when the injuries of the child was explored, it was supervised at that time as well.
Okay, and when Mr. Williams was arrested and charged, did you review the terms of visitation so that she could go back to having unsupervised visits?
From my understanding, her visit was already supervised prior to.
Thank you.
Tell me the date of that order you're referring to, Ms. Evans Battle.
The hearing date was September the 5th of 2023. And Judge, if, I just asked the court to take judicial notice in that particular order is that the mother, we had a hearing because the mother was asking for unsupervised visits. And there was, the court heard all the evidence and determined one of our major arguments has always been the department continues to say, well, we don't know who was the initial assailant for Kior. And as I've explained to the court, that's something that are not going to know. And there's no charges pending against my client. The charges that were pending have been dismissed, and there are no new charges. It's been well over a year, and she has complied with everything that the court has asked her to do. She has a job, she has an apartment, she has transportation. And so the court allowed her to have unsupervised visits. In November, when we had that hearing, nobody addressed whether or not that order should change. Therefore, she should have been having, even though they didn't have the team meeting, even though they didn't have the unsupervised visits, if they're saying that the visitation would remain the same, then because the court did not address it, or if we addressed it, it's not in the order that there was any change. I can't remember that the court ordered any changes. In any event, the visitation should have been unsupervised. And that has not been done. And the department is just saying, well, when I got the case, it didn't happen and it wasn't happening, so I didn't make any changes.
But if I may, what I'm saying is when I met your client, the visits were already being supervised. I don't have any notes or anything to show that your client was having unsupervised visitation. So
When did you take over the file?
January of this year.
Okay, well, what she's talking about should have already happened. And when you took over the file, this unsupervised visit should have already been taking place, or it had been put back on me to make the decision about what kind of unsupervised. So now you said she's done everything she's supposed to do. I thought they said she had not been turning in proof of her employment as far as pay stubs. Have you done that, Ms. Johnson?
No, sir.
Why not?
I'm unsure, honestly.
Well, you've been in one of these cases since 2020, and that's one thing we hear in every case is people turning in proof of their employment. Because I'm not saying you are, but we have had people tell us they had jobs when they really didn't. And that's why the only way we know to verify it with everybody is to get a pay stub. And I understand some employers put your pay on a card and this kind of stuff, but there's still a way to document that. May
Yes,
not be the traditional way with a pay stub, but there's a way to download a printout of what's been paid on the card, or your employer can give you that information. But you've been regularly, consistently employed since last fall when we had that hearing in September?
Yes, sir. I've been employed at this consistent job since about August of 2022.
But you haven't given Mr. Moore any pay stubs or any other proof of what your income is and that you're working?
No, sir. I do need to get him that.
You do. Yes, ma'am.
And Judge, I believe she had provided previously that information. But I agree if she's not doing it, may not be doing it consistent. in the scheme of things, pay stub.
Well, I do not remember having any discussion after that about changing my mind about, and it appears from rereading the order that that there was a disagreement about that, and I made a ruling, and until you just brought it up, I didn't know that the department wasn't following the ruling. And so they need to get on the stick and follow the ruling and have the team meeting and come up with the plan. And if you don't come up with the plan for unsupervised visits, then I'll come up with the plan, just like the order said. But I don't think we need to spend time on since we've
Well, Judge,
5 months have gone by with no supervised visits. Unsupervised visits, I'm sorry. Which child would, one of the older one already has concurrent and Kamari does not. I'm not going to change Kamari's after finding out you've withheld unsupervised visits for 5 months. So that his is going to stay strictly reunification.
and
So who do you have to have a team meeting with to establish the unsupervised visits?
I wouldn't need a team meeting if it's in the court order. I'm not even sure about the team meeting that she's speaking of.
Well,
That may have been something your lawyer came up with. I don't know.
Yeah, the team meeting would be to establish the dates and times of the visitation, arrange for whatever transportation might need to be made to bring the children to those visits, that kind of thing. So I would assume that would be between you, the mother, transporter, Ms. Henley Parks, to see what you can come up with as far as the schedule for that.
Well, I'm going to give you a week to get all that done. And if you don't, just let me know, then I'll do it. And what I would be inclined to do is either every Saturday or every Sunday for 5 or 6 hours to start off for 2 or 3 months, depending on how they go before going to any overnight visits. But we're going to start out with day unsupervised visits to begin with, which we should already be. If everything went well, we should already be looking at overnights, if we're not already in overnights, if we had started on time, but we didn't. So,
yes, and I think we were looking to come here to ask the court to reunify and do a case, an aftercare plan, but I know the court may not be inclined to do that at this point in time.
I need to have some visits, and I'm sorry they didn't happen, and just sometimes you wish you reviewed them more frequently than you do, and sometimes nothing changes and we review them too frequently. So I'm sorry we didn't review this one earlier, so I would have known about this. But so get on that, Mr. Moore, and get that plan hopefully developed. And if not, then I'll develop it for everybody.
Yes, sir.
And can we review the status in about 90 days?
Sure, we can come back in 60 days and see how the visits are going. But if they have every week and mom makes her weekly visits, what are your work hours at this job, Ms. Johnson? Do you work on the weekends?
Yes, sir. I'm off on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays.
Okay. Well, these kids are preschool, so they should be able to accommodate those work days, and because they'll have to,
Yes.
Usually foster parents don't participate in transportation or anything, so just need to.
We already have a transporter. I actually do my visits on Mondays and Tuesdays. My visits are actually currently going on right now as we speak.
Okay. And the transporter's there with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, so what we're going to be changing that, unless you don't want to change it to where
Oh no, I want that change.
the transporter will leave them and come back and get them, I guess, or either a different transporter. But
Yes,
transporter
ma'am.
will be
I mean,
required.
yes, sir.
Okay. All right. But we need to know where they're gonna be, when they're gonna be, how long they're gonna be, and your transporter's not here, but Mr. Moore, had you gotten any reports about mom being distracted during visits, doing on her phone or doing anything that was not involving the kids?
No, sir.
Good. Okay. Well,
Come back in 60 days or?
Yep. Jessica's looking up a date in 60 days. Ms. Evans Battle, and we'll come back and look at things then.
Your Honor, I did want to ask something of Ms. Johnson. That's not in Mr. Moore's court report, so I just need to follow up on that.
Sure.
Ms. Johnson, if you'll unmute your microphone. Now, as part of your case plan, either from the assessments that were done or from the case plan, you were recommended to do medication management to address mental health. Who are you seeing currently for any kind of mental health treatment?
Currently, no,
Currently what?
nobody.
Oh. Were you discharged from a doctor who had consulted with you about that? And they said you didn't need any help?
I was not, but I feel like my evaluations need to be redone.
Well, when were you planning to ask us to do that? I mean, you're supposed to already be doing what they said.
I asked Ms. Wilcox before she left the case, and me and Mr. Moore talked about it this morning.
Are you currently on any medications of any kind to address any mental health?
No, sir.
Did she receive a mental health diagnosis?
Your Honor, I just don't recall off the top of my head. I know I've got in my notes to check about the medication management. So, Ms. Johnson, have you ever been formally diagnosed with any kind of underlying mental health issues?
They diagnosed me during my evaluation.
With what?
They said I had anxiety, bipolar, depression, and PTSD.
And just to be clear, you're not on any medications to address any of those, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Johnson?
No, sir.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore, did I ask you if all that information was true and correct that was reported by your lawyer?
Yes, sir.
Was it all true and correct?
Yes, sir.
Anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Moore?
No, sir, not over what I already asked him.
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Crane.
Mr. Moore, as far as the concurrent plan, which child is under a concurrent plan right now?
Your.
Kior. Okay. And the department intends to file for TPR on both children? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so prior to his current incarceration, my client, the father, was he compliant with his case plan?
From my understanding of your client case plan, he was still living in a home with his mother, so he didn't have housing. I think he was participating in some services like individual counseling, and he was employed.
Okay. Is there an order that prohibits him from living with his mother?
Well, it's more of having adequate sleep area and everything for the children. And from his mother home, there was him, his mother, and another person living in the house. They didn't have anywhere for the children.
Okay. And at this time, is the department able to provide services to my client?
While he's incarcerated,
Mm-hmm.
I can check into it, but I know some jails were iffy about people coming in to do services.
Okay. And do you know the basis of the TPR that is anticipated?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. That would be getting into, I think, sort of attorney-client, and at this point, I've not had a chance to staff that issue with my client.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
That's all, Your Honor.
Ms. Johnson, do you know what the status of Mr. Williams's criminal case is?
For Henry County, last thing I heard, he was indicted or he was about to get indicted. But other than that, I haven't heard anything.
Do you visit him in the jail?
No, sir.
Y'all are not still together?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, you probably told me that before. I just didn't remember. And
Yeah.
just the case has been pending a long time. Anything else from any of the parties?
No, sir.
I just had a question for Mr. Skowronek. Which order were you looking at in reference to the psychological? The not psychological, medication management. Was there an order you were looking at?
Say that again, Mary.
Which order were you looking at in reference to her?
I have it in my notes. I would have to go back and look through that where I got, it may not be in an order. It may have been a recommendation from one of her assessments.
Yeah, I think we looked at that the last time and there was nothing that indicated she needed medication management. If that's from my notes.
All right. The court finds that the department had made reasonable efforts to avoid the initial removal, but finds that there have not been reasonable efforts to secure permanency because of the 5-month delay in starting unsupervised visits, which were necessary for transition back home if that was possible. And the department failed to implement that portion of the case plan as ordered by the court. As far as I know, any legally required services have been afforded the parties and the children. The existing case plan of concurrent for the older child and straight for the reunification for the younger one remain in their best interests. Visitation has not been expanded like it was supposed to be, but I'm confident we'll get that going within the next week. Children are not under 14, not over 14, so we're not talking about ILP. And mom has made substantial progress on her case plan to date. All right, you can take an order that we've made the review and I answered the statutory questions.
What's the date that you wanted to come back?
Thank you. May 6th, 10 o'clock on Zoom, unless y'all want to come in person. Jessica's paying a $10 per head if you choose live hearings.
Yeah, I don't think that's permitted, but you know, that's just me.
He's not.
She said you're not the boss of her. Does that sound familiar?
I'm just saying that I think that if we start having to pay fees to get live
No.
hearings, that
No,
you
Jessica
may
was
be-
gonna pay you to come
Yeah,
on.
I don't know.
All right, we'll be on Zoom unless somebody says, anybody, Ms. Johnson, you're okay doing it on Zoom because you don't live here, so it's easier for you.
Yes, sir. Zoom is easy. I actually live up the 30 minutes away, but Zoom is
Okay.
easier.
Okay. I can't hear you.
I need-
The clerk needs your current address, Ms. Johnson.
Okay. Do you want me to send it via chat?
You can, but you can say it to us right now and she'll write it down. Got that part.
Okay.
It was like every third thing I did got overloaded in the brain. All right. Thank y'all for your time. Ms. Johnson, I need to get consistent visits and good reports from the visits that they went well, that you spent quality time.
You okay?
Okay? And get those pay stubs to Mr. Moore and get with him so y'all can iron out these visits. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you get these will take the place of the ones that are supervised, so you won't have supervised and unsupervised. You just have the supervised, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all take care.